Good evening and welcome back as we continue with our series on the fruits of faith. The last 2 weeks we've spent covering the concept of zuhud, the heart's detachment from the dunya. And we explored that. We explored why we get attached to begin with, how that has a lot to do with our value system. We spoke about how does one readjust their value system. We spoke about what are truly valuable things, what determines something's value, and then how we can attach ourselves. Amongst the many things to be detached from in life is outcomes. See, we spoke a lot about attachment to things, attachment to people, attachment to ideas, but one really important form of detachment that's needed from the believer and that spiritual growth and development should lead to is detachment from outcomes. See, one of the realities that we all face in life is that the future is always uncertain. That's just how life is. And there will always be certain things that lie outside of our control. Always. So that's why in life, when we intend to do something, we're taught to say what? It's like, I'm going to go to work tomorrow, inshallah. What are we literally saying? If Allah wills. Acknowledging that I have an intention, I have a goal, I hope to be able to execute, but admitting that ultimately it depends on whether or not Allah wills it to be. Because I could make the intention and something along the way could interrupt it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not created us all-knowing, nor has He created us self-sufficient. That means what? That means we always have needs. Always. We always have needs. We will always have needs. So we're not self-sufficient. And we're also not all-knowing. We don't know how things will turn out. So I haven't made my point yet, in case you're like, where's he going with this? I'm going to make it very soon. I've been highlighting the uncertainty in life. I've been trying to emphasize that the human being also has no way, in many situations, to guarantee anything, to achieve certainty about anything. What does that give rise to? Uncertainty about how things will play out. Feebleness. The fact that you acknowledge and you know deep down that certain things lie outside of your control. What emotion does that give rise to? Or what feeling does that give rise to? Anyone? Fear and, anxiety. An individual begins to experience anxiety. How do you alleviate that anxiety? Because to just walk into some situation completely without any guarantee or hope that it might turn out well, how do you do that? Especially if it's important to you and if it means a lot to you. How do you walk in? We tend to do what? We naturally look for something or someone to rely on to help me through this. If I slip, someone will catch me. If it doesn't work out, there will be someone there to support me. Or maybe somebody can reduce the uncertainty. Maybe they can tell me a little bit more about it so I know better. Maybe they can guarantee the date. Give me the length of the function, for example, or the length of the event. If you have no details, it's extremely confusing. Like, what's even happening? And that's why, when someone messages you and says, hey, we need to talk, how many of you have this shot of like cortisol go through your body of like anxiety a little bit, right? Because especially if it's your boss, we need to talk. We need to have a meeting. It's like, why? Because, hey, it could be a promotion, but it also could be you get fired. God forbid. La samahallah. It could be anything. And so I don't know about you, but sometimes I ask someone, hey, do you mind sharing a few more details so I can walk in with just a little bit of a better idea? And between now and then, my mind's not racing about what's going to happen. Like, what are we talking about? Because the more details you have, the more the uncertainty is reduced. And for that, the question becomes, who do you turn to? One mistake we might make, and this is a common mistake, is self-reliance. Self-reliance. This is a dangerous trap. The individual who chooses to play the game of life, to experience the gift of life, relying on themselves. That is way too much pressure for any feeble, mortal human being to carry on their shoulders. To guarantee anything for anybody, not even for yourself. What our deen teaches us repeatedly in the Quran is you should rely on Allah. How many of you have heard that before? You should trust Allah. Situation came up, someone told you, trust Allah. How many of you, if you're honest, kind of went, it's easy to say. Easy to say, just trust Allah. You're not the one walking into the situation. It's easy to, and this is something that we need to think about as a community. A lot of times in our conversations, we spell out what the end goal should be. You should trust Allah. But we don't often walk through what does it take for somebody to trust Allah. Why might someone struggle trusting Allah? What are the ingredients required for someone to actually trust? We just tell people, trust Allah. That's the end goal. And even in their minds, they'll say, I want to, but I can't. I don't know. It just feels overwhelming. I don't know how to. So I hope, inshallah, in this week and in the coming week, to hopefully break this down a little bit. Because it's a very important point. In life, you're going to go through tests. You're going to experience challenges, and you're going to wonder what they mean. And you might even begin to interpret the test a certain way, which affects your relationship with Allah. It affects your relationship with Allah. Because, one person said it this way. They said, sometimes we don't turn to Allah when He puts us in a test. Because it's like, well, if this is a test, I need to have the answers. I need to have the answers. How many of you had a professor who said, hey, whenever you get stuck during the semester, please come talk to me and I'll work with you through the whatever it is that's you're struggling to understand. Any of you had professors like that? They're the ones who are going to test you, but they also tell you what? When you get stuck, come, I'll help you out with it. Some of us, we just don't think they're serious, or we don't realize how much help we need, or we just think, you know what? It must be me. I should just study harder. I'm just going to rely on my own abilities and skills and work harder. That's self-reliance. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not how things are. Where when the test day comes, you can't ask the professor. The same professor who told you throughout the semester, come see me. On the test day, you put your hand up. It's like, I can't help you. Now you need to prove yourself. What Allah tells us is, you are going to be tested. And that's a core ingredient of trust, is you need someone to be honest. Can you trust somebody that's not honest with you? I think the answer is no, you can't. Allah is honest. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا. And there's none more honest than Allah. He doesn't hide anything in the Quran. He doesn't promise that you're going to live this amazing life if you're a believer. He tells you, we're going to test you. And somewhere along the line, we internalized a different message. So we understand the tests of life sometimes very differently. And we also understand trusting in Allah often very differently than how we're supposed to. So we're going to talk about that. Allah tells us that the tests come from Him, the solutions come from Him. Tawakkul is that you find yourself in a situation that came from Allah. And the way to get through it is by relying on Him. Because He's the one who creates the problem and He creates the solution. He creates the test and He creates the way out. Shaykh Abdul Hakim Murad, he says, Tawakkul is both the lock and the key. Reliance on Allah is both the lock and the key. You end up in situations where you don't have the answer. It looks like a lock, like you don't know how to get through to move forward. It seems like Allah's put this challenge in front of you and you don't know what to do. How do you get through it? By turning to Allah. By turning to Allah. Trusting this is from Allah and then trusting that Allah will get me through this. That is what tawakkul is all about. But the scholars, they say this. One of the scholars, he writes, he says, التوكل من أصعب المنازل. He says, relying on God is one of the hardest things for a person to achieve on the spiritual path, on trying to get close to Allah. And a lot of us experience this. We start praying more and making dua and doing good, and we're drawing close to Allah. But when those moments of uncertainty come along and we're being tested whether or not we can trust Him, we bail. We're like, no, I got to take care of this. I got to make sure it happens. You know, we let go because in life we try to control things because we don't like the uncertainty. So we start to let go of things. But when that final moment of you have no guarantee moving forward, can you fully let go and say, Ya Allah, I'm extremely vulnerable here. I have no idea whether this is going to work out. It could be amazing. It could be an absolute disaster. I don't know. But to the best of my knowledge, this is a good idea. So I'm going to move forward. Some of us struggle right that moment. That's the moment we panic. We call it cold feet, right? Just back off. I can't do it. Your family wakes up and you're like, no, we're not doing this. They're like, what happened? What do you mean? I'm sorry, guys. Right? I'm sorry if it hits too close to home. But it happens. Last second. Because we're looking for certainty. A certainty that does not exist except on the other side of our decision. And so we hold on, hoping to get some certainty, and you will not have it. Which is why I started with the idea that the dunya, inherently built into the dunya, is uncertainty. It's the idea you will not ever have certainty about the future. And you will not have all the answers. Could you have missed something? Always. Is there something that could have slipped your mind? Yes. But the reason why we panic when we think about those things is because we're relying on ourselves. We're relying on us. And so if I fail to prepare adequately, then I fail. But if you go in not expecting your prep to guarantee anything, you're not trying to control the outcome because you've conceded to begin with, I can't control this outcome. Then you don't put that pressure on yourself, number one. And you don't look for a certainty that does not exist. And this is really important. The ability to become comfortable with uncertainty in life. Because how else do you make decisions? How else do you move forward when a part of you wants to pull back? You fear, You have anxiety and you just want to pull out and say, no, I'm not doing this because it's so much easier. You can't fail if you don't try. And so we just want to do that. But you can't because that in itself is a failure to try. That in itself is a failure to try. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith of Tirmidhi, it's mentioned, أعقلها وأتوكل أو أطلقها وأتوكل. O Prophet of Allah, I have my camel right here. Do I tie it up and trust God, or should I just leave it and trust God? Do I need to do anything? And he said, no, tie it up and trust Allah. The idea of relying on Allah, number one, does not mean that we don't make any effort. That I just sit back, I trust God will make it happen. No, you actually have to take some steps. And this is very fascinating for me because I have people come to me and they'll talk about how they're really upset, they're frustrated. Things aren't working out for me. What are you doing about it? Well, nothing. I'm just kind of waiting for Allah to bring it my way. I don't think that's how it works. You have to take action. No, but like it makes me very uncomfortable. Oh, that's the issue. So you're trying to spiritually bypass your discomfort. I'm uncomfortable approaching the situation, so what do? I just tell myself I'm gonna be spiritual and rely on Allah. That's a lie. That's not trusting. The scholars that call that tawakkul. It's like pseudo, fake reliance on God. It's not real. It's just you're just using it as an excuse to not have to put in effort. So like before the exam when you're like, have you prepared? Like, yo, I prepared my Bismillah, right? I prepared my Bismillah and Ya Allah help me. That's what I prepared. That's tawakkul. That's not real reliance. Because the hadith tells us you have to do everything in your ability, everything, before you can even begin to turn and say, Ya Allah, what's this? How come I'm not getting the results I want? But even there, we need to be careful. I'm going to make a point here, and I'll explain it a little bit elaborately, but I think it's so key. Because if you get this point, I think it can shift a lot of how we think about Allah. Maybe you've seen this before. An individual starts trying to draw near to Allah. Okay? A person starts getting close to Allah. They start praying. Maybe they start dressing differently. Maybe they start to leave out certain behaviors and avoid certain things and try to do more good. They're at the masjid more. They're trying to fast more. They're attending halaqas. And then something happens. And it seems the individual drifts away. And many times they come back. And they say, you know what? I used to be so connected to Allah. Like, man, sometimes they'll say, I'm still praying and I'm still fasting. I'm still doing some good. It's just not the same. I don't feel it. I don't feel connected. Or the way my prayer was back then, man, what I wouldn't give to go back and have that state of prayer again. What's changed becomes the question. They're not sure. They're like, I don't know. I don't know why it is that no matter how much I want to get closer to Allah, I just can't seem to do it. I'm praying, but the prayer is not the prayer it used to be. My attachment to the Quran is not what it used to be. There's something missing. And how many of you have heard of such a situation? Yeah? Okay. One potential issue here, which is a very real one, I've seen it come up multiple times, is that the individual, when they first started drawing near to Allah, the way they were viewing their relationship with Allah to begin with was flawed. How? And you're going to say, how? What do you mean? The individual started praying more, right? Started dressing more modestly, going to the masjid, eating halal, avoiding many sins, really made like some significant lifestyle changes. What was the wrong approach? What would tell us that is something happens to an individual sometimes where they're, in their own eyes, I'm doing all this good, I'm doing this good, I'm doing this good, I'm pleasing Allah, and you can't help but notice some of the same people that you used to be around and hanging around with, they're not making the changes, and you're doing all this to try to get close to Allah, and then what happens? A test comes your way, or something that you were hoping for, like, I really hope this is going to work out, and you go and you try, and it doesn't work. And then you just sit there and go, Ya Allah, how could you? Like, the last 6 months, all that I've been putting in, all the sacrifice, all the effort, all the changes, it means nothing? How come I'm not getting the result? And my friend who hasn't made a single change, it worked out for them, right? You know what I'm talking about? It can lead to a person feeling resentment towards God. Ya Allah, why would you do that to me? And subhanallah, what we might even do sometimes is we might give up on the good. You know what? Oh Allah, I tried. Okay, Allah? I put 6 months in. Allah, you saw me struggling. And when I needed something, Ya Allah, you didn't give it to me. So you know what? Okay. What's the point? Change your clothes and you go back. Right? It happens. What was the mistake? What was the flaw here? The individual saw Allah as a means to an end. The goal was not Allah. The goal was fulfilling their own desires and what they wanted out of life. And Allah was just the means. The whole time, there was this implicit, unspoken expectation. Allah, I'm going to do good for you now. 6 months. Watch me. I'm going to grind. And when the time comes, I'm going to cash in on that check. Rejected. What's this? How could you, Ya Allah? And this resentment, if not addressed, can turn to anger. People feel angry towards Allah. And look, sometimes if someone even expresses that, we start shaming them. I've seen this happen where someone's like, I'm a little upset with Allah. And everybody around is like, Astaghfirullah. What's wrong with you? It's like lightning bolt's going to come down or something. Like this, everyone's first. Look, it is not a correct thing to say, like ideally. But the person's feeling what they're feeling. If they're upset, they're upset. How are they going to address it if they never express it? That was a bar. You saw that? And I didn't even mean to. That was it. How are they ever going to address it if we don't give space to express it? Now, let's break this down though, because like I said, that resentment will change to anger, and the anger will. How do you trust someone that you're angry with? How do you trust someone you're angry with? And you might say, well, okay, fine. Maybe they won't trust Allah. What's the big deal? Oh, I'll tell you the big deal. How do you face the uncertainty of life now? The one that would have helped you through those moments of uncertainty, you can't trust them because you're upset with them. Now you're left to deal with the anxieties of life all alone. It's just you facing the situation and you're terrified and you have no idea what to do. There are real existential consequences and repercussions to not trusting in Allah. Because then who do you trust? So, this is something to think about. How do we view religion and specifically our relationship with Allah? Is it a means to an end merely? Is that all it is? Look, we consider it so wrong to use a human being as a means to an end. We consider it like wrong ethically. Like what kind of friendship is that? You're just using them? Imagine an individual trying to use Allah, use their Lord. Imagine someone doing that. So what could be done differently? Well, Allah needs to be the end, one. But let's go back and still reflect on this idea of using Allah as a means to an end. Here's how it kind of, if we read the underlying assumptions being made, it's this idea that if I'm just good enough, if I'm good, then when the time comes, I'm going to make this decision. I don't know if it's going to work out, but hey, I've put in my 6 months of work with Allah, so now I trust Him. This is an interesting thing as well. The individual after 6 months goes and makes this big decision. And when someone tells them, hey, like, you sure about this? They're like, yeah, no, I trust Allah. What does that mean? Does that mean they trust Allah to do what is best? Or I trust Allah will do what I want? The two are very different, right? And sometimes if we don't realize it, that's what we're doing. We say, I trust Allah, meaning I trust He will do what I want Him to do. And that's why when He doesn't do what I want Him to do, then I'm extremely upset. High expectations, high disappointment. And the resentment and the anger ensues. And so we have to start to wonder, wait, when we talk about trusting Allah, what do we mean? Do we mean I trust Allah will do what I want? Because that's not what Allah wants us to trust. That's not the way and the manner in which He wants us to trust Him. I trust Allah will do what I ask Him to do. Because there's a deeper point we're making as well. We're saying, oh Allah, I'm about to make this decision. There is uncertainty, but hey, I know what the best decision is. It is for me to have X in life. So, oh Allah, I'm going to ask that you give me X. And I trust that you will give me X. We're implicitly suggesting we know better than God. Implicitly. That's what we're suggesting. And there's a major problem with that. Because that's not what trust is. It's almost like we make dua and then we micromanage from the back. Ya Allah, I want this. And then, Allah, why that? Why not that? And then we start pointing, Ya Allah. It's like, telling someone you go in the store and get whatever you want. And they try to pick it up. You're like, no, that's not good. It's like, I thought it was whatever I want. And now you're telling me not this and not this and not this and not this. Basically, you want me to buy that. Right? Do you get what I'm saying here? That's our dua. Ya Allah, Allahumma inni astakhiruka bi'ilmik. Oh Allah, give me khair, but make khair that person. That's not istikhara. I trust Allah will give me. That's a real flaw in our understanding of who Allah is and what our relationship to Him is. Allah is not the ATM. When you need to, you just withdraw. That's not how this works. Because trust, so Shaykh Abdul Hakim Murad about this, he says something beautiful. He says, trust in God, not in your trust in God. Trust in God, not in your trust in God. So here you are sitting, and you're like, I prayed to God that God give me that. And I trust that He will give me. So what am I actually trusting? my trust in God. Like I have tawakkul, and tawakkul will guarantee this. So I trust that my trust will guarantee that result. Was that a little bit of a mouthful there? Huh? Think about it. Basically, don't turn your trust into a means. I'm using my trust as a means to get exactly what I want in the name of trusting God. You know what Allah tells us in the Quran? He says in Surah Taha, وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ زَهْرَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا لِنَفْتِنَهُمْ فِيهِ. Allah says, you know when Allah gives other people stuff that you want, and you can't believe it, you can't even understand how that's possible, that they could live such a life of disobedience and Allah gives it to them. And here I am, fasting and going through all these difficulties and I'm not getting it. And sometimes we longingly, we look at them. Maybe that's the way to go. But that's the test. Again, if you're using Allah as a means to an end, then of course, that's maybe the way to go for you. Maybe that's the way that makes sense, to go that way. If Allah is the end, that way will never get you to Allah. If Allah is the end, that way will never get you to Allah. Does that make sense? That's our relationship with Allah. So the reality is that we weren't actually trusting Him. We were telling Him what to do and then demanding that He abide by it. What is true trust? It's to hand over the outcome of your affairs after doing your planning. You do the best you can. And then you say, beyond this, Ya Allah, it's out of my control. I trust that whatever is khair, whatever is good, will come out of this. And you know what's crazy? Is whatever's good doesn't always look good to us. Yeah. Whatever's good won't always look good to us. Because in our eyes, what is good? Success. That this thing works out exactly how I want it to work out. That's what's good in our eyes' perspective. But the human being remembering the fact that they don't know truly what's good. When something does not go the way they want it to go, they concede. Ya Allah. What does trust actually look like? The scholars, they give an example, and I'll read this. They say, trust? You wanna know trust? Look at a child. A young child, like my son. I could tell my son, let's go, get ready, put your jacket on, shoes on, let's go. And that's what he'll do. He will ask me, where are we going? And if I just tell him, don't worry about it, inshallah, it'll be good. It's okay, let's go. He has no idea where he's going. But he's willing to drop what he's doing, put his jacket on, put his shoes on, jump in the car, and go. That's trust. He doesn't know how it could turn out anyway. We could end up anywhere. Trust is you have no guarantee. You don't even have a promise it's going to be, we're going there. Trust is, this is the individual that I trust, and I trust that they will make a decision that will not be against me, but rather it will be in my favor. Because they know me, and I know them. They know what I like. So when they tell me, I'll give you what you like, I'll take you somewhere that you like, it's like he knows me, so he will take me where I like. And two, I know him. I know how he's dealt with me, so I trust him. We're going to talk a lot more about this next week, inshallah. How our trusting of human beings and our openness to trust affects our relationship with Allah. We'll talk about that next week. But the child who trusts their parents doesn't try to force their parents to do something, right? If my son sits in the back and says, no, I want to go here, I say, no, listen, just trust me. I'll take you somewhere where, that you like. And he goes, no, I trust you, but I trust you to take me to the place I want to go. I say, that's not trust. It's the child putting their hand in yours, and they just follow you wherever you go. Just follow you wherever you go. When you don't trust someone, you stop at every turn. Where are we going? Why? Why not there? Why are we not going there? And it's just you can't go anywhere. And some of us, that's how we are in life with God. Allah starts to open up a door. Why, ya Allah? Why there? I want to go. No resistance all the time. Imam al-Ghazali, he says that he talks about levels of trust. He says one level of trust, the second out of 3 levels. The second level, he says, is أن يكون حاله مع الله تعالى كحال الطفل مع أمه فإنه لا يعرف غيرها. He says, do you know what? You want to see like trust? Look at a child and their mother. The child doesn't know anybody but their mother. So when something goes wrong, the child just turns to the mother. Anything comes across that scares them, turn to the mother. So the solution to everything. No food, mother. Right? Like, Toronto Maple Leafs lose, turn to mother. Right? Like, anything happens, mother, solve this. He says, that's true trust. Whatever happens to you in life, you're not sure how to move forward. You're not sure what's going on. Ya Allah. Ya Allah. Help me through this. Oh God. Show me the way forward. I trust that whatever's happening, there's khair in it. The word tawakkul comes from the root letters waw, kaf, lam. And you get a word wakil. Even in Urdu, you have the word wakil, which means what? It means a lawyer, someone who represents you. The client can't go and argue their own case in court. They say, what? You're my wakil. You're my lawyer. I hand it over to you. Now I trust that you know my case. You have my interests in mind, my best interests. You're trying to win this for me. And whatever the outcome, I could never do better. I could never do better. I trust that you'll handle this. That is meant to be our relationship with Allah. Do you know one of the benefits of trusting Allah? It's freedom. A person's soul experiences a degree of freedom in life. I mean, just look at children. How free are children? How free are children? They just run around. And, like, we walk in the masjid, we don't know people, we're like, right? Sometimes we're a little bit like, I don't know that person. Should I go say salam? Like, I don't know. We're really hesitant around people. Kids, they run through the saf. They come running up here. You should see them after prayer. They always come up, Assalamu alaikum. I'm like, mashallah, look at you. Public speaking, they're ready for it. Like, they walk in front of a whole congregation. It's like, Assalamu alaikum. I'm just like, free. No worries. A child, when they go with their parents somewhere, it's free, running around. Any of you ever taken a sibling, or if you're a mother or father, you take your child? In the mall, you're trying to walk in like situational awareness and stuff, right? And your kid is running over there. It's like, come back here, get back here. Can't even like hold their hand. You know what I'm talking about? Because it's just, they're free. They trust. Hey, if I run that way, my parents got my back, right? No matter where I go, I know my parents taking care of me. And what we do as we get older, because we start to understand things, and because we start to feel like we need to control the outcomes, we become very rigid on not only our understanding of the world, but rigid on the outcomes that we think are good for us. Isn't that what we tell kids? We tell kids, hey, I signed you up for this. They're like, okay, right? Like, signed up, whatever it is. You know me, it'll be good. And we get to a point where, like, as we get older, we can't even make a decision, and nobody can make a decision for us. We're just paralyzed by analysis. Because the goal of analysis is what? Examine every detail. Don't miss a single one, so that you can be guaranteed an outcome. And that too, we're convinced is the right outcome. So we become rigid in our outcomes. How free are you when you're walking around with rigid outcomes in front of you? You're not free. You're constantly emotionally, spiritually weighed down by the pressure to get X, Y, or Z. That's it. Nothing else is an option. Nothing else is an option. Because the illusion of control. If I can just control things, then I'll be safe. There's an incident in the life of the Prophet ﷺ that's just amazing. In the Sahih of Imam Ibn Hibban, and in the books of Sirah, when the Prophet ﷺ was migrating from Mecca to Medina, he was migrating with his companion, his Khalil, his closest friend, Abu Bakr radiallahu an, his closest friend. He said it's his brother. He said he would have been his Khalil if there was any Khalil for him. The two of them are traveling from Mecca to Medina, and they're in pursuit is a man by the name of Suraqa ibn Malik. Suraqa bin Malik narrates this incident. He says, as I'm getting close to the Prophet ﷺ to try to capture him, because he wanted to capture the Prophet and take him back to Mecca and to earn a reward, a bounty. He says, Abu Bakr kana yukthirul iltifat. Abu Bakr was constantly looking over the shoulder. He said the Prophet ﷺ did not look back. Just walked. Just walked. Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ trusted Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr's taking care of this. I'm just trying to get to my destination. Abu Bakr's got my back. He's taking care of anyone to come. He'll let me know. He was comfortable. Do you understand that? That's trust. What we're doing in our lives is we're strangling our happiness with our grip. The control that we want in life. We're strangling our happiness. Because let's say you even get the outcome you want. Let's say you control situations and then you try to force an outcome and you actually get the outcome. Are you free now? Like now you don't have to worry, no stress anymore? No. Now the anxiety shifts. Before it was the anxiety of, will I be able to get it? And now you have it. Now it's going to be, can I sustain this? What if I lose it? What if something goes wrong? What if this person finally finds out the crazy side of me, right? People talk about it all the time. Yeah, like what happens then? Because it's not going to solve the problem. The outcome will not solve the problem. Because the outcome was never the issue to begin with. It was the process. And if you continue to apply the same process, you will continue to run into the same anxiety and uncertainty all the time. Because that's how life is. So we're strangling our happiness with our grip. Because we're convinced our happiness lies where we want it to lie. That's why Ibn Ata'illah, he says, and this is such a profound aphorism. I think I might have mentioned this aphorism like numerous times in Thrive. Because it's just so relevant to so many different contexts. Ibn Ata'illah, he says, Al-ghafilu idha asbah yanzur madha yaf'al. He says, the one who's heedless of God wakes up in the morning and believes that they have to take care of everything, solve everything, essentially guarantee every outcome. وَالْعَاقِلْ إِذَا أَصْبَحْ يَنْظُرْ مَاذَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِهِ. He says the person who's mindful of Allah, like connected to Him, knows Him, trusts Him, when they wake up in the morning, they plan. They plan. And they have goals, aspirations. But they're always wondering, what's going to be the interplay between my goals and aspirations and Allah's plans? They always leave room in their plans for Allah to bring about His divine wisdom. Because they're not gripping it. They're not gripping it and strangling the decision. They're holding it loosely. And if Allah wants to pull it in a certain direction, it's okay. I can allow it. I can live with that. Abu Ali al-Daqqaq, one of the pious, he said, there's 3 levels here. This is very, very useful to think about. 3 levels when you speak about trusting in Allah. The first one is tawakkul. The second is taslim. And the third is tafweed. Let's break it down. The first one, tawakkul, we can translate as reliance, which is, oh Allah, I trust this, I entrust this affair to you, Ya Allah. You're going to take care of this, Ya Allah. The outcome is from you, Ya Allah. And you are Al-Barr. One of Allah's names is Al-Barr, the source of all goodness. So I trust, I'm handing this to you, and I know that whatever comes out of this will be good. I trust. So that's prior to whatever decision you make. You trust in Allah. Then you go forward. You take that step. Make that decision. And then things unfold. That's where the second step comes in now. Taslim. The second step is to say, I accept whatever outcome it is. Look, before we make the decision, sometimes we say, oh Allah, whatever decision is made, this khayr, this goodness, we say this because we know that's the Islamically correct thing to say. But then when things actually play out in a way that may not be aligned with what we want, we're like, really? How? Come on. Make it make sense. How could they be good at this? That's the second step, taslim. Taslim is to say, oh Allah, I accept whatever outcome you've decided. I accept it. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to constantly, why, Ya Allah, what's this? I accept the decision. And the third is tafweed. Tafweed is to say, I entrust my rida, my contentment to you, Ya Allah. I am not content. I'm not placing my contentment in what has been decided. My contentment is that, Ya Allah, that you decided. I am content with the fact that you decided. Because sometimes you can't bring your heart to actually fully be like, yeah, this is totally cool. A part of you sometimes like, no, I don't get this. But if you say what? Tafweed is to say, Ya Allah, if it's from you, I accept. Ya Allah, I hand it over to you. I won't fight this any further. This will not affect our relationship. These are the levels that a person has to go through. Then comes the question, why trust Allah rather than anybody else? And this is connected to the idea of, well, what does it even take to trust? The two are intricately connected. So actually, I won't start that conversation today, inshallah. That will be next week, inshallah. But I want to just wrap up with this point about, hopefully from today's session, we were able to kind of step back and go, wait, when I say I trust Allah, does that mean I just trust Him to do what I want? Or I trust Him in whatever He decides? And that will actually, I really think, shift how we view the concept of trust in Allah. And what is even the nature of our relationship with Allah? Is it very much I'm using Him as a means to an end relationship? And that's not what the Quran wants from us. That's not the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Look at the Prophet ﷺ when he went to Ta'if. I want to give this one example to illustrate this idea. Did anybody worship more than the Prophet ﷺ? Was anyone more pious than him? You know how like we pray, like one day we pray 20 rak'ahs tarawih, and after that, like all of our du'as better be accepted, right? The Prophet ﷺ every single day demonstrated the highest level of servitude to God. And yet, over and over again, things were not playing out in the most convenient way for him. You see how easy it would have been for him to say, Ya Allah, all this good I'm doing, like, Ya Allah, forget acting and practicing Islam. Ya Allah, I'm introducing people to Islam. Do you see how easy that could have been? Ya Allah, I'm your prophet. I am the one who is teaching everybody your religion. I'm connecting people to you. And you can't even do this for me? You can't even keep my uncle alive? Or my wife alive? Am I really asking for something that bad? Sometimes we do that too. We say, Ya Allah, I'm just asking for something halal. Am I really asking for something that bad you can't give it to me? The Prophet ﷺ goes to Ta'if. Why? Because there's good food in Ta'if? No. He went to Ta'if to invite people to Allah. And he went rejected. But he didn't give up on his relationship with Allah. He makes a dua after, and in his dua, that's what he says, Ya Allah, like things didn't play out. I think maybe I didn't do things the way they should have been. Right? Allahumma inni ashku ilayka du'fa quwwati. Ya Allah, maybe I'm just not strong enough. Wa qillata hilati. Maybe I didn't plan it well enough. Wa hawani ala nas. Maybe I'm not as important in the eyes of the people as I should be for them to then be influenced by me. But eventually he goes and he says, Ya Allah, if you're not upset with me, then I'm good. إن لم تكن ساخطا علي فلا أبالي. Because that's what it was always about. It was always about his relationship with Allah. Allah was not a means to an end. Allah was the end. Allah was the goal. The goal on the spiritual path. The fruits of faith are not that these fruits are going to get me something. It's that, no, these are the goal. Allah is the goal. And so the Prophet ﷺ was happy. Ya Allah, as long as I don't lose my relationship with you, I'm good. The Prophet ﷺ would make dua, Oh Allah, لا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. Don't let me rely on me for even the blink of an eye. And here we are, trying to like make major life decisions just because of me. There's a big difference. And so we have to really ask ourselves, why? Why don't I trust Allah? You know when that person tells you, you should trust Allah. And a part of you goes, I want to, but I can't. Why not? What are the obstacles? What's holding you back? How do you actually start taking steps to trusting and entrusting the decision to Allah? And whatever outcome comes, you're ready to submit to it and be content with Allah making that decision for you. Well, that's what we're going to talk about next week, inshallah. All right, guys? Jazakumullahu khairan for coming out. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to continue gathering for His sake so that we can draw closer to Him. May He make Himself our ultimate life's purpose, our ultimate goal in life. May He never disconnect us from Him. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Again, jazakumullah khair to all of you for coming out. Like I say this every week, but truly, it is an honor, a pleasure to gather like this and really think about our relationship with Allah. My goal is always for these conversations to be very real. I'm not here to say a bunch of, what's the term? I'm looking for a word here. Starts with a P. It's not platonic. It's just like, words that we just say because they're just typically said in settings like these. Anyone know? No, they're not platitudes. Anyone know? Pleasantries. I mean, that would work, but that's not. Oh, this is going to bug me the whole night now. MashaAllah. But yeah, Uh, I really hope our conversations can be very meaningful. Um, this just a moment of transparency and vulnerability with you guys, but Thrive is one of the harder sessions for me to prepare for. This is actually one of the harder ones. Not to say the other ones are easy, but Thrive, I'm not here to just say a bunch of words that, you know, we've been hearing our whole lives without trying to make sense of them, because I don't think that's useful. If we just say words, then all you're gonna walk away with are words. My goal is to get to the reality of what does it even mean? Because I think that's what actually transforms. And for that, I can't just read. Because I could read and I'll read words. But some people will see me. Is Abdullah here? Ibrahim sees me. Sometimes I just pace around. Have you seen me? I just walk around because I'm thinking, how best can I convey this? So I value these conversations, and my goal is to hopefully help, myself and all of us have a better and a deeper understanding of what these concepts represent. Otherwise, I could just do what everybody else does, which a lot of people and say, guys, trust Allah, rely on Him, and then walk away, and subhanAllah, we're good. Alhamdulillah, bihamdi, right? So may Allah reward you all for coming out, and until next time, inshallah.